military capabilities in this war. Let's go back to the 12-day war. If the US did not get involved in the 12-day war and there was no ceasefire, with the information that we have now, what would have been the outcome? Because back then you talk to people that are pro-Israeli that say Iran was decimated. You talk to people that are pro-Iranian that would have said Israel's getting decimated and they requested the ceasefire. But that was before we have the information that we have now, which really is Israel's capabilities, air dominance, but more importantly, Iran's capabilities after so many strikes by not only the Israelis but the Americans. So putting those together, where would Israel and Iran be in that 12-day war if it continued?
Well, that 12-day war would have been much more devastating and destructive for Israel. I was there on the ground in Israel during that 12-day war and saw the daily and nightly barrage of Iranian missiles coming in and the Iron Dome and David's sling activating, constantly. I was right there in Beersheba during that 12-day war. So I was on the receiving end of some of those ballistic missiles, especially the one that hit in downtown Beersheba was about a block from where I was. So when you look at the U.S. support and supplying of the Iron Dome and David Sling and the munitions and some of its radar array makes it possible. Without the U.S. munitions, without the resupply of U.S. munitions, without the radar array that supports the immediate radar location, it's I wouldn't call it useless, but it's easily defeated. In that 12-day war, had the United States not provided the munitions, I guess what you would call the radar dome over the Iron Dome. So the Iron Dome, the Iron Dome is not this, this invisible, bubble that just goes over Israel. It's an array of radars and sensors and systems that attract from long distance, track the missiles coming in. If they're ballistic, meaning they go outside of, they leave the atmosphere, level 1 atmosphere, and then come back down and drop. These radars either attack it before it leaves or before it re-enters, or if you have direct attack munitions, they sense them at a further distance. The idea is to kill the missile as far away as possible. The Iron Dome and David Sling only has a certain range. So without the United States cooperation and support in its radar functionality to identify missiles further out, David Sling and the Iron Dome would become overwhelmed at the point of where you have all of these missiles coming into, let's say, Tel Aviv. Without the U.S. support, the 12-day war would have been far more destructive for Israel, and I think would have potentially gone on longer because Iran would have recognized an advantage at that point in time in the penetration of their missiles, had the U.S. not supported Israel in that.
Because the American radars are able to spot the missile early on to allow the interception to happen early before it gets too close to Israel. The closer the missiles get to Israel, the more difficult it would be to intercept them. Is that what about now with the destruction of the radars that we know of? I remember one satellite image by CNN. There was like 5 out of 6 radars in Qatar, I think it was, that were destroyed. Radars that are very difficult and expensive to replace. Doesn't that make the Gulf and Israel more susceptible, more vulnerable? And could that have been also one reason why the Iranian hit rate later in the war, as the war progressed, the percentage of missiles that landed on their target was increasing in the late days of the war? Even though Iran was firing less of them, they were also landing, more of them were landing.
That's right. Iran was firing fewer, but of those that they were firing, they were having a higher success rate of precision strike, meaning if you look at the actual effectiveness of it, it was therefore then more effective. In the way that the U.S. radar systems, imagine, a very, applicable analogy would be like, in American football, you've got the quarterback on the field, you got the front line, you got the linemen, you got your receivers, you got your tight end, you got everybody, all the players, you got the coach or the coordinator that's on the field. They see what's happening on the field, but then all the way up in the booth, you have the, kind of your other coordinator that he's watching the entire field. He sees it all. and then sees it looking at the entire field, he can see things that the coach or the quarterback can't see because of where he's sitting. However,
Yeah.
he's not as effective in the timeliness of a quick play shotgun call because he's not on the field. You have to have both to be effective in your defense and offense. So in this exact analogy, the radar systems that we had in Kuwait, you saw pictures of it in the beginning days of the war. It was the one that looked like the giant golf ball. It almost looked like
Yeah.
the huge golf ball.
The
That
white one,
radar
yeah.
system was one of a kind in its capability. That radar system, or that radar array central hub, was that coordinator sitting up in the booth watching the entire region. When you take that out, boom, you then lose that overall look. So now you're just playing off of what you see on the field. And then over time, when you take out the defensive coordinator and then you take out one of your wide receivers, you're then putting a lot more pressure on the quarterback and the coach to coordinate everything. Things are gonna drop. Things are going to get
That's
missed. Things are going to
that's
fall
the
through the cracks.
that's the radar he very quickly.
Yep.
The
That
dome, the white
system of
dome.
radars there, that array of radars is kind of what you would think of almost as like the capability of like the Death Star, in its ability to provide eyes and ears, at least from the radar perspective, of
Mhm.
that entire region, that entire region, everything from
The
where they are,
radiomes,
pretty much the entire region.
yeah. And those are
And
that's probably
when
the
they took
biggest
those out,
success military.
it was a poke in the eye, literally a poke in the eye for
How,
the for
Anthony,
U.S. ability to see.
how did the US not know this was coming? Where was the miscalculation? Because I worry this will happen again. And could it happen again? Like, ignore if could it happen again. Where is that miscalculation? What went wrong to end up where we are now and the destruction that we have now?
Well, for years and years and years in the fighting of the global war on terror, I would say probably in the last 10 years, the United States started to recognize that um, the true threat, or what we perceived as the existential threat, is going to be the massive armies and conventional capability of China, Russia, potentially the nuclear capability of Northern Korea. And we always recognized that Iran was not necessarily a friend, but we didn't see them as a threat directly. So the United States over the last decade has really amped up what we call near peer or peer threat, creating a military to fight a military equal to ours in capability. That is very expensive. Missiles and systems are very big. You can see a lot, but what you sacrifice in mass and synchronicity and massive technology and the ability to command and control large formations, what you sacrifice in that is then your ability to have to fight asymmetrically. It's very difficult for a Patriot missile to shoot down a Shaheed one-way drone. It's very difficult. So when you look at, can a Patriot system shoot down a hypersonic or a Katav missile system? Absolutely, exquisitely. Can a Patriot missile system shoot down a one-way drone? And let's say you fire 100 of those one-way drones at once, you're then overwhelming conventional systems. So what the United States, um, I wouldn't say failed to recognize, but the United States put its lot, if you will, its defense capability build up over the last decade in peer or near peer threat war, not anticipating a war with Iran unless it was full scale, conventional Navy versus Navy, Air Force versus Air Force type of engagement, not the asymmetric fight that we're now seeing. Go back to the USS Cole, when the USS Cole was taken out by a guy in a dinghy, and you have one of the most advanced battleships on the planet taken out by the equivalent of a rubber boat you can buy at a sporting goods store. So
Who was it by? That was in off the Houthis, wasn't it?
it
By the
was,
Houthis
yes,
or
Yep, the USS
I
Cole.
remember that, and had to go. It had a big hole in it, and I had to go. But this happened in South Lebanon. As we get closer to wrapping up, look at this. Someone just sent it to me now. This is a restaurant. It
It's a
minimized the
restaurant,
video.
yes.
Yeah, you saw that?
I
How
did, yeah.
fucking disgusting. Look at this. How fucking disgusting. Sorry, because how disgusting is this? This is a restaurant. That boat was a restaurant. If you minimize
That
the
boat is a
video,
restaurant that has been there for a long time. It's a very
for a
popular
decade. And
place
look
in
at the
Lebanon.
images. There's an
Yep.
images in that tweet, Lisa. There it is. That's the restaurant. Like, come on.
Yep.
Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what's happening in southern Lebanon, border of Israel up to the Litani River, and then even in Beirut, it will, and this was something that I went back to when to understand this nature and destruction of warfare is very difficult to grasp and comprehend unless you actually see it. And even then, it's difficult to comprehend. The most destructive, what I would say the most um, apocalyptic scene that I've ever seen in my life was Raqqa, Syria, in the fight against ISIS. And you can go back and find pictures of Raqqa, Syria in 2018, 19, and the level of destruction in going and driving through Raqqa en route south through the middle Euphrates River Valley in the pursuit of ISIS in Syria. Never in my life had I thought that I would see anything as devastating. And I had fought in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in other parts of Syria, in the southern Philippines, in high intensity warfare. And when I saw Raqqa, Syria, I thought nothing could ever compare to this. And when I went into Gaza, it shook me to my core in terms of what I thought was the capability of destruction and
That's
devastation. And
Raqqa.
now we're seeing that.
That's
That's
Raqqa in Syria.
that's Raqqa in Syria, which imagine that is a major metropolitan, second largest city in Syria to Damascus.
Yeah. Oh,
Gone.
that's
So when you
another one
look at right
here.
now what's happening in Lebanon, it's that level of destruction. Yep, that was the main street, the
Let me show
M3
that.
highway through Raqqa, Syria.
That is
Yep.
insane, man. But Gaza, I think people should go on their phone now. Just check Gaza after destruction. It is. I post videos of it just to remind people. Man, like how? Like, come on. Like, look at this. Just it's fucking insane, man. It's just insane
It's
that this happened.
unfathomable. It's hard.
Look,
It's hard to
but like,
grasp.
how? Like, this is it. Look at this. Let me show it on my computer. My producer's just off a bit, so I'll just do it on my computer here. Look at this. I'll zoom in as much as I can.
Yeah.
Like, this is World War II type shit. This is a nuclear bomb.
Yep.
Being detonated. Multiple nuclear bombs being detonated. It is insane, man. It is insane what humans are capable of. It is wild. And in Lebanon, South Lebanon, they're leveling villages. That was a restaurant that we just saw.
Yep.
That was a restaurant. Like, what's the explanation for that? Hezbollah was under the restaurant?
No.
That is wild, man. That is wild.
But
It's
even when you
insane.
look at some of the the level of destruction, the level of targeting, the way targeting has now become so there was as the world kind of turns back to what we see as large scale combat operations, such as what we're seeing in Iran, such as what we're seeing in Ukraine and Russia. No longer are the days of minimalized global war on terror where you're conducting counterterrorism or very specific precision type missions with little to no collateral damage at times. We're now going back to where we're seeing from World War One, World War Two, mass scale destruction of entire cities. I mean that picture you showed of Gaza, that's all of Gaza. The pictures
insane,
that we're
man.
now seeing of Lebanon, that's not just a neighborhood or the front lines. That's all of southern
And look
Lebanon.
what just came out of Israel now. It's not a piece of news. just this is a commentator, Israeli journalist on TV, on national TV. I don't understand the fear of using the word occupation. We have a once in a lifetime opportunity to occupy Gaza and Lebanon. We must cleanse the area, expel the local population, and replace them with Jews. Like how could humans be indoctrinated to that level? It starts, I used to think that when I was a kid, when I used to watch what happens in like what happened in World War II, when I watched things like Schindler's List, yeah. And I start thinking, like, how could humans like me and you commit such atrocities? And I'm just really fascinated. I never could answer it, and I would read different books about it and stuff when I was younger. And then now I'm starting to get the same thoughts. I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying that this is the second time I'm getting like, how could Israeli people, people like me and you, people that just want to live life, enjoy life, what mindset would they be on? They're not more evil than me and you. And I'm not saying all Israelis, but the people that support the 10% that support Smotrich and Ben Gvir, for example. And I start thinking, like, when they see Ben Gvir's wife, my producer's off now, but there's Ben Gvir's wife. Let me show it quickly here. The tweet. I'm not sure if you saw it.
She made for his birthday party, made a birthday cake with a noose on it.
Yeah, like far out. This is a birthday cake she made for him, and they were celebrating his birthday. This is the birthday cake. And in that birthday cake, this is a video of her celebrating. Look at her. Look at they like just loving each other. And she's like, so the noose represents the law that passed that that says that Palestinian people that commit a certain crime get the death penalty. Only applies to Palestinians. Yeah, and the message on the cake, I can't remember what it says, was something like, "Congratulations on achieving something great," or something like that. I can't remember what the quote says. I had it written.
I mean, Ben Gvir was the I would say the loudest advocate for that law to be passed in the Knesset. We saw that when it was passed last month, he celebrated with champagne, popping corks, so to speak, in the Knesset, celebrating that. Ben Gvir, Smotrich, and others in that far right membership of the Knesset wear that same noose you saw on that cake. They wear that as a lapel pin.
As a pin.
On their suits.
Like how? And it says, the cake says, "Congratulations, Minister Ben Gvir. Sometimes dreams come true." Like, for someone like me that always tries to be nuanced and try to be objective on as much as I can, like when I see these things, and then someone comes to me and they can make the argument, Mario, Hamas committed atrocities, which is absolutely true. Hezbollah's been attacking us, which is also absolutely true. I'm like, yes, both are true. But you don't go there and level villages. Like, if you go and damage Lebanon significantly to destroy Hezbollah, I could debate that. I can understand that. But if you go there and you level restaurants, I had the IDF spokesperson, I keep forgetting his name. Great guy, very nice guy. I think he's in a difficult position, IDF spokesperson. But I really like him. His name is Brigadier Effie. No, that's not him. I can't remember his name. There's another guy. Nadav Shoshani. Great guy. I've had him on the show multiple times. And I asked him to come again after the leveling of villages started, in the comments by the defense minister that Lebanese people can't come home even after the war ends, 20% of the population. I invited him. We had a book time and he rescheduled it, or his team rescheduled it. And since then he hasn't come on the show. He's been on the show many times. He's a regular. Because I think he also understands, like, that cannot be explained. That cannot be explained. That is not
beyond.
human.
It's beyond. It comes to a point to where it's beyond defensible. It's beyond explanation. It's beyond justification. My firsthand view of that, not in Lebanon, but in Gaza, was looking at the fact and knowing that as an army, as a nation, as human beings, once you cross a certain threshold, the codification of the dehumanization has become so ingrained that there are no more red lines. And that's the fear that I've seen from having fought. I witnessing the atrocities of ISIS in Syria and Iraq. When you see the humans take all red lines off the table and there's no longer a threshold of what's no longer acceptable or justifiable. It's done in a way to where they don't even, like, I would say that like someone like Ben Gavir doesn't even care about an explanation or justifying it anymore. He doesn't even try to hide it.
What's more annoying, like I have Senator Ron Johnson coming on the show later, and I like him. He's got a lot of great policies when it comes to the US. But I was researching his stance when it comes to Israel, the war in Iran, what's happening at Gaza, and he's like Mario, or he doesn't, not Mario. I haven't interviewed him in a long time, but he talks about how Israel has a right to defend itself. Iran's the threat needs to be neutralized, and I want to ask him, like, when you say these things, do you think about the state of the U.S. military? Number one. Number two, do you think about, like, have you watched the videos coming out of Gaza? Have you watched these kids that are using rubble as slides? I saw that today. Or the ones just like women giving birth without anesthesia, or people getting cut off without anesthesia. Like I had a finger injury when I was interviewing President Lukashenko a year ago. I had a finger injury, swollen, and I had to cut it to get the stuff out. Sorry for being graphic. And I was like, fuck, like imagine people that don't have anesthesia that have to go through things like this. I don't want to imagine that world. Well, that world is happening right now. That's putting aside the famine, the diseases, and it's just like the US
amputations without anesthesia.
Man, I don't. It's just so fucking sad, man. And it's like the United States, the pinnacle of democracy and freedom, which a country I love, and I love democracies. But like this wouldn't happen if the US was not offering that umbrella of protection for Israel. This wouldn't happen in Israel if the freaking media is not feeding those messages of hate and divisiveness to the people, where the people start to see Palestinians as all evil. So the way to be able to justify these things, you start perceiving certain class of people as evil, because then you're like killing evil. That's how, terrorists have that same mentality. They're like, when they bomb a building full of civilians, or they blow themselves up and kill a lot of civilians, they're fighting evil people in the name of God. So the way sane people, I'm not talking about mentally ill people, the way sane people justify those things is they just portray a certain image that is so skewed from reality, where somehow children are no longer seen as children. And it's fucking wild. Like, you've seen it firsthand.
Well, the narrative of killing, of the killing of children is the narrative of that is that if, that they will simply grow up to be the next generation of terrorists. God. So killing them is simply the hard choice that has to be made to do what's better for humanity or for the nation, or whatever the justification is. And when you look at how that can continue to devolve, it then gets to a point to where there are no limits. Imagine if someone said, like, so does every human being, does every nation, does every entity have the inherent right to self-defense? Of course. I don't think anybody's arguing that. But imagine, if you will, in a scenario where someone says, I'm going to slap you, and they haven't slapped you, but they're reaching back to slap you. So you kill them. You just shoot them and say, oh, I was defending myself. Okay, well, that is not an appropriate level of response to that threat. Or let's say the person says, I'm going to slap you, and they do slap you. So then you kill their entire family. That would not be an appropriate response to the action in terms of self-defense. And so what we're seeing here in Gaza, in Lebanon, and it's even harder when you're talking about that explanation in Lebanon, to then ask yourself, where what's the limit? What's the red line? What's the because if the world just throws out international law, laws of armed conflict, Geneva Convention, then where are the red lines? What's off limits?
As we wrap up,
that's what's scary.
Just remind the audience, because I remember we discussed in our first interview, what were the scenes? Can you describe the scenes you saw in Gaza again when you walked in, when you drove first time?
It's something I'll never forget my entire life. I see, I mean, just, you see behind me these buildings and the lake. I'm here in Chicago. That's Lake Michigan behind me. But it's very reminiscent of the scenes of, looking out over Gaza. And with total destruction. And on May 24th, 2025, when I went into Gaza for the first time as part of this reconnaissance element with the IDF, as we're driving through Rafah, southern Rafah, along the Philadelphia corridor, the bombing that had occurred the night before, the rubble of those buildings, still burning. You can hear human beings crying out from beneath the rubble. People that were in these buildings and homes and apartment complexes that had been leveled, where there were children, men, women, fathers, mothers, grandparents buried in this rubble. Not Hamas, not terrorists, but human beings. And then, where you see bodies that have been left, that have been disregarded after weeks of bombing, and feral dogs, eating at human bodies, human flesh. Tal al Sultan, the neighborhood of Tal al Sultan, which is in southern Rafah, which is right up on the Mediterranean coast, that at one point was a beautiful, beautiful beachfront community, is now leveled to the ground. The scene looks like the opening scene to Terminator Judgment Day on the playground in that opening scene. And again, when I in the vehicle that I was in when we drove in, the individual driving that vehicle was a seasoned, retired, career-long Green Beret. The person in the front passenger seat was a retired, seasoned combat veteran Green Beret, and I was in the middle jump seat, a seasoned veteran combat Green Beret. And when
That's
we
the
drove
Judgment
in,
Day opening scene that we mentioned, yeah?
just like that, that's exactly how Tel Al Sultan looks. Almost, I mean, you couldn't tell the difference. And when when we drove into Gaza through the Kerem Shalom crossing with the IDF, all three of us I have the videos of this. It was just dead silence. We were in beyond what we could comprehend in terms of how is this possible. And the guy sitting in the front passenger seat, a former Green Beret officer who I served with prior to this Gaza experience, had said, long ago have we passed the days of laws of war. And he was right. But the thing is, now, if you look at what's happened to the entirety of Gaza, that scene that you just showed that looks like, that basically apocalypse on Earth, that's all of Gaza. That's all of it. That's every square kilometer of Gaza is that. So,
Oh, man.
to your,
Yeah,
to the point
struggling
you were
to stuff.
making, medical procedures without anesthesia, birth without anesthesia, infant children or preemies that have no baby formula, who just simply die of asphyxiation, of starvation, with doctors watching this happen because there's nothing you can do without the right equipment or the right medication. Or how do you feed a premature child when there's nothing coming in, especially baby formula? That child simply, minute after minute, hour after hour, day after day, in its very young life, dies. How do you justify that?
Yeah, man. Yeah, Gaza's a different beast. Gaza's a different beast. Like things in Ukraine, Russia, even though there's a million deaths, we could have a discussion about it. I disagree with it, but there's a discussion to be had. There's some places where it's just impossible to be nuanced and objective anymore. But anyway, look, man, it's always a pleasure to have you, Anthony. Really
Yep.
appreciate you coming on.
Anytime, reach out.
And I'm sure